we'll see if this hot toddy I made is too strong or not, or just right. All right, hello friends. As you can see, I have notes prepared, and I got some pictures, and we're gonna talk about one of the most important corpses in the story. Cold Hands is pretty important, Barrack's pretty important. Basically, all the zombies are super interesting to me. Hopefully that doesn't make me a necro something or other. But they've got really good symbolism. I don't want to have intimate relations with any of the zombies. I just want to understand their symbolism, explain it to you guys. So that's what we're going to do here. And of course, I've talked about Cold Hands a lot recently. We've been spending time at the Night Fort. We've been talking about, Knights, Queen, and King, and the creation of the others in the Night's Watch, and how this all goes back to green men. Okay, hopefully you guys have watched the Green Men of the Night Fort stream. I'm pretty proud of that one. It's tying together a lot of theories. So Cold Hands is really important because he shows us a lot about Jon and the Night's Watch, fighting the others and all that kind of stuff. Barrack is really important because he's probably the first zombie that really jumped out to me. Boo, jump scare. Because Barrack, of course, wields a flaming sword, and he's running on R'hllor power, so he's bearing the Azor High symbolism and je ne sais quoi, if you will. And also, Azor High's got a lot of undead ideas associated with him. For example, all those who die fighting in his cause will be reborn. So Barrack, lots of Azor High and fire magic stuff, but he's living in a weirwood cave. And literally in a weirwood throne. When we meet him, he's up in the nest of roots, and he walks down making his little speech. It's very Robin Hood-like, but it's also undead Azor High in a weirwood cave. And this is one of the first things that got me thinking about Azor High as someone who is interacting with the weirwood magic somehow. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So with Lady Stoneheart is heavily associated with weirwood stuff. And in fact, she's following up with Barrack, of course, and taking over Barrack's merry band and making them a not-so-merry band, which we'll get into. But the main thing is that Lady Catelyn is a very strong Nissa Nissa figure, and she's a very important Nissa Nissa figure. And all of her death symbolism has to do with going into the weirwood net. So there's a couple of things that we need to be familiar with as far as to understand what we're going on. So one is the green sea metaphor, and the other is the weirwood stigmata. A lot of you guys will be familiar with this. There's been a lot of people that have joined the channel recently, though, so permit me a slight bit of review. But essentially, the green sea is very simple. The ocean has always been used as a metaphor for the unconscious, or for the bardo, for the unknown. Anything like that can be analogized to the ocean, to the sea of stars. It's a great unknown. It's kind of scary. We don't know what's down there. So it's associated with things like the sea of chaos, the void, the unknown, all that kind of stuff. The green, in A Song of Ice and Fire, the magicians who navigate the void are the green seers. The green seers. So Ravenous Reader, my friend, brilliantly observed that George is making a joke. He's saying, well, the green seers are swimming in the green sea. And so anytime you see a body of water, particularly that's labeled a green body of water in some way, and you see people going in or coming out, we should think about people going in and out of the weirwood net. All right? So Catelyn's death, she is thrown into the green fork of the trident. So that is showing you that this character, when they die, is entering the green sea. Lady Cat is, like I said, a Nissa Nissa figure. And one of my best old podcast series is called The Weirwood Goddess. It's only 3 episodes. It's really good Arya and Melisandre and Catelyn symbolism, as well as some of the other female characters like Asha Greyjoy. Let's see, there's all the wildlings, Ygritte, like the wildling, what am I trying to say? The 6 warrior maidens that are at Winterfell with Mance Rayder. It's lots of really good stuff here. But essentially, Lady Catelyn, one of the most important things about all the Nissa Nissa figures is that they all have Child of the Forest symbolism. And of course, the children of the forest are described as having cat eyes. And so we see a lot of the Nissa Nissa figures having cat symbolism. Now, of course, her name is Catelyn, but there's also Cersei, the lioness, and then there's Catelyn's children, Sansa and Arya, which we're going to talk about a bit today as well. A lot of them are associated with the ash tree. Here's the other thing about the all of these weirwood goddesses is, of course, the weirwoods, the faces with trees, they're heavily modeled after Yggdrasil of Norse mythology, which is an ash tree. It's literally the type of tree is an ash. But the weirwoods, not only are they modeled after the ash tree Yggdrasil, they also look like they're on fire, right? Because those red leaves are described as like a blaze of flame. And so you've got this idea that the weirwood trees are on fire with the fire of the gods. And we've got the Grey King myth, where he taunts the storm god. There's a lightning bolt that sets a tree ablaze, and that's how the Grey King, who is a green seer character, gains fire for humanity. It's through a burning tree. But the burning tree is really the weirwoods. And of course, the Grey King has a lot of weirwood associations elsewise. So flaming tree, burning tree. It's also like Moses' burning bush. The point is it has the god fire in it. It's the god fire tree. So the idea of it being an ash tree works two ways. It's the fire and ash as well as the Yggdrasil ash. So a ton of the weirwood Nissa Nissa figures have the name ash in them. So there's Melisandre of Ashai. She's a really important one. And in fact, I've got her weirwood goddess picture. Melisandre looks exactly like a weirwood tree. Same coloring. This is by Donato Giancola, and I do have some art ready for you guys today, by the way. So the weirwood stigmata is probably is a good place to talk about this. The weirwood stigmata, George grew up Catholic, Yggdrasil. That's how you say it. George grew up Catholic, and there's a lot of Christian symbolism in the books. Of course, the stigmata is when it's sort of a Catholic mysticism idea. It's supposedly when someone manifests the wounds of Christ, specifically the nail wounds in the hands and feet, right? You get the crown of thorns maybe too, I think, the blood from there. So the weirwood stigmata is when people look like the weirwood trees. So the weirwood trees, of course, they have bloody mouths and carved faces, right? Their eyes they're crying bloody tears. They have blood in their mouths, and their faces are carved. If you look at the leaves as hair, then the hair looks like blood and fire. So somebody with bloody hair, fiery hair, or red hair also contributes to this. Chapter rereads upcoming. Well, we're going to do a weird chapter reread today. So I should, just to clarify before I dive in any further, I've got all the Stoneheart text set aside. So I've got the epilogue of Storm, and I've clipped, that's where Merritt Frey goes to get hung by the Brotherhood. That's where we meet Stoneheart. I've got all the important parts clipped out. And then I've got Brienne's chapter, where she meets Stoneheart. Again, the important parts clipped out. So it's kind of a reread, but it's also a theory talk. So yes, there will be lots of chapter rereads coming. And thank you for the super chat, Garth Greenlung. There's only going to be a couple more weeks where I'm doing the live streams the way I'm doing them. I'm changing the way I do live streams in order to better take advantage of YouTube and to give you guys a little more edited material. So what we're going to be doing with the live streams is they'll be more like live tapings. Then I'll be pulling them down and editing them and putting them up. So it'll have the little gaps condensed. It'll have some more images added. And if I get off track, those will be cut out too. And that way, for those people rewatching the live streams, they will move faster and be more visually entertaining. Also, YouTube has just recently changed the way they classify live streams and videos. If you know, when you go to someone's channel now, they have the live streams hidden in their own tab. You don't even see them. You just see the produced videos. So essentially, I noticed the live stream watches are going down compared to the produced videos. So what we're going to be doing is more like what Gray Area does with her podcast, where she tapes it off air and then edits it and puts it up. The only thing is that I'm going to be letting you guys check out the live taping. That's going to be for squishers and patrons, essentially. So it'll be an unlisted link. And you guys that are giving me any sort of monetary support will be able to come to the live taping. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions or whatever. I will still occasionally do like live public Q&A streams to give everyone a chance just to ask questions and stuff. But this is something I've got to do in order to take better advantage of what YouTube is doing. And then for everyone that watches on the rewatch, you'll get a faster moving, cleaner, more produced product. So we're going to try this starting in February, just so you know. So if you're Luna, you're a squisher, for example. So all the squishers and the patrons, you'll still be able to come to, like I said, the live taping. So you'll see the whole thing unedited. This will allow me to take my time a little bit and not feel like, oh gosh, I'm taking dead air when I drink my tea or whatever. The vast majority of people that watch them on the rewatch won't see any of that. So if you come to the live taping, you'll see a little extra content. Okay, it's a little bit of a bonus thing. But for everyone else, you'll get a better product. So that's kind of, there it is. You'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Don't worry. I've got a lot of content coming for you. So, other announcement. I've got a new YouTube channel that I started. That's right. Another YouTube channel. It's called Moon Media. Moon Media Collective, technically. It's youtube.com/@Moon Media Collective. And it's going to be for everything that isn't a Song of Ice and Fire. So Dark and 1899 at first, but also other movies or anything else that I want to cover. Not even just fantasy. So go subscribe. Everyone go subscribe. Moon Media Collective. I've got a monster 1899 video coming tomorrow morning on the new channel. So go subscribe to Moon Media Collective, and I'll have a big fat 1899 video coming tomorrow. Hour and 20-minute discussion full of images. I had Anthony James from Culture Cave on. It's going to be hard hitting. I'll get Heidi on and stuff. We're going to go into dark. So Jenny of Old Stones, one thing I've said about the squisher and all that stuff is like, if you once you get a link to the Discord, you're pretty much in. So if you support me and then you have to, stop doing it or whatever, you're still going to have Discord access and you'll still get the link to come to the live streams. And if you've been a longtime fan and you're super tight on money, I've said, just hit me up on social media. I'll give you an invite to the Discord. I'm not trying to have it be too much of a barrier or whatever. It's more that like I need to make sure I'm giving extra stuff to the people that are giving me money. And then I also need to constantly keep an eye on how YouTube is moving their target as far as what content they want and stuff like that. So thanks for bearing with me as I try to master that. But let's talk about Lady Stoneheart. So we've given you the Green Sea and the weirwood stigmata. Okay. Now, Lady Stoneheart is a great example of this stuff because she does both. Catelyn, rather. She is a cat woman because of her name. Okay. Many of the Nissa Nissa people have red hair because of the weirwoods. So Sansa's auburn hair, Catelyn is more red. Let's see here. There is, the Children of the Forest have red hair. Then there's one of the wildlings has an ash name, and she has red hair. Melisandre has red hair. Dany has fiery hair. From the Dunk and Egg book, Rohan Weber. She's a great one. She has red hair that coils in her lap like a cat's tail. So it kind of gives you both. Ygritte, thank you. Ygritte. Jesus, I knew I was forgetting someone big. So I don't know if George has a thing for redheads. Maybe that's part of it. But it's definitely symbolism. The point is to make them look like weirwood trees. So the stigmata is more dramatic. So Catelyn gets the stigmata twice. The first time she gets it is with the cat's paw assassin. And that's, of course, a really fun one. When Catelyn fights the cat's paw assassin, and this art is by Thaldir, she gets the full stigmata pretty much, okay? So she first gets the bloody hands. Now, the weirwood leaves, remember, are described as red hands. So part of the weirwood stigmata is also bloody hands. Edric Stoneskin. There's a lot of Nissa Nissa symbolism showing her as a mermaid. Yes. Cat's a fish woman. The mermaid wife. Yes, that's the all Green Sea stuff. Nissa Nissa is a mermaid because she is a child of the forest who goes into the weirwood net in different ways. That's exactly right. And that's also why Dany goes into the great Dothraki grass sea. That's also Nissa Nissa going into the sea. And then Dany has all that mermaid and seahorse symbolism. So same idea. That's the first stigmata. So she gets the bloody hands because she stops the knife, right? So her hands are cut, bloody hands. She bites the assassin's hand like a cat does. So then she's got a bloody mouth, okay? The assassin grabs her hair and pulls on it. She gets blood in her hair too. So she's fully decked out like a weirwood tree at this point. And then she's saved by a wolf who comes up and kills the cat's paw assassin. There's crazy wordplay going on there, but I don't want to get lost in that. So check out the Weirwood Goddess for the full breakdown. But the point is, that's weirwood stigmata. And Catelyn goes through a transformation experience. If you remember, before that happened, she had been in a dream for ever since Bran's death. She'd been in a daze. Catelyn had been in a daze for a month after Bran's death, ignoring all of her duties. After this event, when she gets the stigmata, she wakes up and she aggressively gets on top of things. It's a transformative experience for her. There's more to it than that, but I'll just leave it there. It's not an actual death, but it's a rebirth. And that's the important thing, is all the death scenes are also going to be rebirth scenes. So then at the Red Wedding, I'm going to read just a little bit of the Red Wedding. So trigger warning, think about the symbolism, not the horror. Okay, if you can. Robb had broken his word, but Catelyn kept hers. She tugged hard on Aegon's hair and sawed at his neck until the blade grated on bone. Blood ran hot over her fingers, so bloody hands. His little bells were ringing, 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 and the drum went boom, boom, boom. By the way, Aegon is Azor Ahai here. Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa die together, as I've always said. Catelyn. Yeah, I guess I usually say Catelyn. I probably mess around, though. What does Lyn mean? Lyn means something. Somebody looked that up for me. I looked it up one time. I know it's an important meaning, but I just forgot. So this Aegon Jingle Bells dying at the same time as Cat. Just want to point that out. It says, finally someone took the knife away from her. The tears burned like vinegar as they ran down her cheeks. 10 fierce ravens were raking her face with sharp talons and tearing off strips of flesh. And that would be this artwork by Jonathan Burton. And those 10 ravens, of course, are her fingernails. So she's clawing her face. It says, leaving deep furrows that ran red with blood. She could taste it on her lips. So she's carving her own face here. So her face carved like a weirwood, bloody tears like a weirwood, blood in her mouth like a weirwood. It's the whole thing, right? Oh, Lyn is another word for wall. That makes sense. Yes. So there's, of course, the wall is really important in all this. The cat of the wall. Very good. See, it hurts so much. Our children, our sweet babes, blah, blah, blah. The white tears, sorry, cat, blah, blah, blah. The white tears and red ones ran together until her face was torn and tattered, the face that Ned had loved. Catelyn raised her hands and watched the blood run down her long fingers, over her wrists, beneath the sleeves of her gown. So when she raises her hands, she's literally becoming the weirwood tree with her white arm branches and bloody hands up in the canopy like a tree. Okay, and she's and now she's watching him. So she's literally like a weirwood tree now, watching her own leaves. Okay, and that word watching is always important. And then it says, slow red worms crawled along her arms and under her clothes. And we know the weirwood roots are always described as being like worms. Let's see, it tickles that made her laugh until she screamed. That's the agony and ecstasy symbolism. If you remember when Nissa Nissa is stabbed with Lightbringer and dies, she cries out with agony and ecstasy. Melisandre, when she births the shadow babies with Lightbringer symbolism, agony and ecstasy. So we see different echoes of that. George gives us these sets of phrases so we know what we're talking about. So she's laughing and crying at the same time. So that's Nissa Nissa, agony and ecstasy. And there you go. And then it says, then the steel was at her throat and its bite was red and cold. So that's the final sacrificial wound. So remember, when someone has their neck cut, that's called getting a red smile, right? Well, the weirwood trees have red smiles. They're carved red smiles. So when someone cuts your throat, they're really carving a red smile into your neck. So this is actually yet another layer of weirwood symbolism to cut her neck. So she's been turned into a weirwood tree. And then, like I said, she was tossed into the green fork. So the green fork of the trident, not only is that the green fork the green sea, but of course the trident is a very important river. It's named after the weapon of a sea god. So the trident is like a holy river as far as symbolism goes. And it's got the red, green, and blue. Those are the three kinds of magic that we're mostly concerned with in the books. The three powers of the gods. You've got red fire, blue ice, and green sea or magic. And they're obviously all connected, just like the prongs of the trident connect to one river, or one, if it's a weapon, it'd be one staff, three prongs, three forms of magic tied together at the root. So that's the river trident. Okay, so Catelyn, weirwood stigmata, thrown into the green fork. This now is Arya's chapter, which comes just like a chapter after the Red Wedding. I believe it's the next chapter, either that or like the two after it. That night, she went to sleep thinking of her mother, again, Arya, and wondering if she should kill the hound in his sleep and rescue Lady Catelyn herself. So at this point, Arya thinks that she might be held captive at the Twins. If you remember, the hound and Arya were outside the Twins when the Red Wedding was going down. The hound saw what was happening. He conked Arya on the head so she couldn't run away from him and basically saved her life and beat it out of there. So this is like the next chapter. So Arya doesn't know if Catelyn's dead or not, doesn't know if Robb's dead or not. She just knows something bad has happened at the Twins. So she's thinking about rescuing her mom. So when she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's face against the black of her eyelids. She's so close I could almost smell her. And then she could smell her. The scent was faint beneath the other smells, beneath moss and mud and water. Thank you, Vadermark. Hey, joining the Squishers, look at you. Beneath the other smells, moss and mud and water, and the stench of rotting reeds and rotting men. That's a stinky one. She padded slowly through the soft ground to the river's edge, and of course this is Arya's wolf dream. Lapped up a drink, then lifted her head to sniff. The sky was gray and thick with cloud, the river green and full of floating things. So the green fork is literally green, and it's full of dead things. And remember, the whole point of the green sea, it is associated with death. Okay, the green seers, like Odin, are straddling life and death in the middle in order to go and walk between worlds. So a lot of people enter the weirwood net by dying or get resurrected out of the weirwood net. So it's heavily associated with death. It is beyond the veil of tears. That's kind of the idea. So the green fork is full of dead things, and it's literally green. It says dead men clogged the shallows, some still moving as the water pushed them, others washed up on the banks. And the others do come out of the weirwood net. So this is probably an intentional double entendre about the others coming out of the green sea here. And we're going to see a lot of others and Night's Watch kind of coming and going as we read this stuff. Her brothers and sisters swarmed around them, tearing at the rich, ripe flesh. The crows were there too, screaming at the wolves and filling the air with feathers. Their blood was hotter, and one of her sisters had snapped at one as it took flight and caught it by the wing. It made her want to crow herself. She wanted to taste the blood, to hear the bones crunch beneath her teeth, to fill her belly with warm flesh instead of cold. She was hungry, and the meat was all around, but she knew she could not eat. The scent was stronger now. She pricked up her ears and listened to the grumbles of her pack, the shriek of angry crows, the whir of wings and the sound of running water. Somewhere far off she could hear horses and the calls of living men, but they were not what mattered. Only the scent mattered. She sniffed the air again. There it was, and now she saw it too, something pale and white drifting down the river, turning where it brushed against a snag. The reeds bowed down before it. That's interesting language. We've seen that bowing reed language for Drogon out in the Dothraki Sea. So this is basically, I think, language George uses to tell us that like something sacred or holy is going on, right? nature itself is like acknowledging that something is going on. So she splashed noisily through the shallows and threw herself into the deeper water, her legs churning. The current was strong, but she was stronger. She swam, following her nose. The river smells were rich and wet, but those were not the smells that pulled her. She padded after the sharp red whisper of cold blood, the sweet cloying stench of death. She chased them as she often chased a red deer through the trees, and in the end, she ran them down, and her jaw closed around a pale white arm. So that's another Nissa Nissa Child of the Forest clue. The Child of the Forest, cat eyes, but of course, they've got the dappled brown skin of a doe, and also the larger eyes of a doe, if you want to think about that as well. So a lot of the Nissa Nissa women, in addition to cat symbolism, they'll have doe symbolism, a lot of dappled and spotted skin, a spotted cat symbolism, stuff like that. So here we see that cat is, Arya is basically comparing chasing down a doe to chasing down Lady Cat. That's essentially the symbolism there. She shook it twice to make it move, but there was only death and blood in her mouth. By now she was tiring, and it was all she could do to pull the body back to shore. So pulling somebody out of the river is symbolism that goes along with resurrection. I just want to point that out. As she dragged it up the muddy bank, one of her little brothers came prowling, his tongue lolling from his mouth. She had to snarl to drive him off, or else he would have fed. Only then did she stop to shake the water from her fur. The white thing lay face down in the mud, her dead flesh wrinkled and pale, cold blood trickling from her throat. Rise, she thought, rise and eat and run with us. So that's cool. Arya's trying to do a resurrection. The sound of horses turned her head. Men. They were coming from downwind, so she had not smelled them, but now they were almost here. Men on horses, with flapping black and yellow and pink wings, those are the cloaks, and long shiny claws in hand, those are the weapons. Some of her younger brothers bared their teeth to defend the food they'd found, but she snapped at them until they scattered. That was the way of the wild. Deer and hares and crows fled before wolves, and wolves fled before men. She abandoned the cold white prize in the mud where she had dragged it, and ran, and felt no shame. When morning came, the hound did not need to shout at Arya or shake her awake. She had woken before him for a change, and even watered the horses. They broke their fast in silence until Sandor said, "This thing about your mother." "It doesn't matter," Arya said in a dull voice. "I know she's dead. I saw her in a dream." So, Arya knows what she has seen, and she understands what has happened in the dream. So, Lady Catelyn has been pulled from the Green Fork. Now, later we're going to find out that those men, the pink and yellow and black cloaks, or not black cloak, but pink and yellow, that's going to be Thoros, or Beric rather, and Lemon Cloak. And we know that what happens is that Beric gives his flame of life to Stoneheart, to Lady Catelyn, to raise her as Stoneheart. Beric does not survive this. So this is, Thoros is a living fire wizard performing this shadow binding resurrection when he resurrects Beric and binds Beric's shadow to his reanimated corpse. But what Beric is doing is a little different, because Beric is already undead. So he is instead giving up his flame of life to the corpse of Nissa Nissa, essentially, and reanimating Nissa Nissa. So this is a really important thing to understand. So Azor Ahai, like I said, Beric is an Azor Ahai figure. We know that from the flaming sword and all that stuff. However, there's a lot of people that have overlap between Azor Ahai and Night's King. And it's gotten to the point where I'm pretty sure that Night's King was Azor Ahai in some form. There might be Azor Ahai and son. So dad or son may have become Night's King. The other one might be the last hero. We don't know. It's hard to tell. But Beric giving his flame of life to dead Nissa Nissa to create a corpse queen. See, this is the heart of the Stoneheart symbolism, is she goes from being a Nissa Nissa figure, very clearly, to dying. She goes into the Green Sea. She comes out, and she looks like a corpse queen. She literally is a corpse. And yes, Not only does she live in a weirwood cave devoted to Mariah, when we meet her, she's in the godswood at Old Stones. So she's always in weirwood locations. So she's a weirwood ghost, is what I called her way back in the day. Now, my big question was, is this weirwood ghost, Lady Stoneheart, is she representing the corpse queen of the Night's King story? Or is she representing what happens to Nissa Nissa after she dies? Or is that the same friggin' thing? So I'm going to see if we can get closer to figuring that out today. But that is a large part of what we're trying to drill down to. Because Lady Stoneheart is animated by R'hllor, which leads you to think of Nissa Nissa and fire magic. Nissa Nissa is associated with weirwoods and dragons. But when Lady Stoneheart speaks, it's like a river of ice. And she is cold and hateful in every sense. She kind of feels like a corpse queen as well. In any case, that's kind of setting the stage here. Alberto says, the reason Beric brought Cat back was because he felt failed and lost Arya. Yeah, that is true. Days later, the Red Wedding, he must have felt like a total failure. Yeah, I agree. Inside the plot, I think it's partially because Beric was just done. Okay, we know he was done. But yeah, passing his flame of life on to Catelyn probably was good karma for him. And I do think he was disappointed in failing to protect Arya. I do think that's true. So let us join Merritt Frey, the drunken Merritt Frey. The road up to Old Stones went twice around the hill before reaching the summit. Overgrown and stony, it would have been slow going even in the best of times, and last night's snow had left it muddy as well. Snow in autumn in the Riverlands, it's unnatural. So we've got unnatural snows, guys. Merritt thought gloomily, it had not been much of a snow, true, just enough to blanket the ground for a night. Most of it started melting away as soon as the sun came up. Still, Merritt took it for a bad omen. Between rains, floods, fire, and war, they had lost 2 harvests and a good part of a third. An early winter would mean famine across the Riverlands. So, bad omen, unnatural snow, early winter. You guys get the idea. So, who is Merritt Frey? So, these 2 chapters that we're going to read parts of were both following 2 people, 2 very bedraggled and injured people who are on the way to meet Stoneheart in a weirwood location. One of them is Merritt Frey, and the other one is Brienne. Now, Brienne is a more obvious version of this character. Merritt Frey, I'm just going to read you and see if you can figure it out. So this is Merritt. Well, he'd had 2 horns of ale when he broke his fast, and a small cup of red when he set out, but that was just to keep his head from pounding. Merritt could feel the headache building behind his eyes, and he knew if he gave it half a chance, he would soon feel as if he had a thunderstorm raging between his ears. Sometimes his headaches got so bad it even hurt too much to weep. So, he's got 2 horns and a cup of red. So anytime you're drinking red, you should think of drinking blood. So he's a horned guy drinking blood. He has a thunderstorm raging between his ears. This makes us think of course, the Storm Lords of Durrandon and Baratheon, who wear antlers, they wear horns, and they have green seer symbolism. Because, of course, if you have antlers, then that's green man symbolism. So, a horned guy, drinking blood, a Storm Lord, and he's on his way to the godswood. It says, beneath the castle ruins, the lower slopes of the hill were so thickly forested that 100 outlaws could well have been lurking there. They could be watching me even now. Merritt glanced about and saw nothing but gorse, bracken, thistle, sedge, and blackberry bushes between the pines and the gray-green sentinels. Elsewhere, skeletal elm and ash and scrub oaks choked the ground like weeds. So we've got a forest that's watching him, even though he can't see any people. So that sounds familiar. It's like a haunted forest type of thing, or just a weird thing. And of course, the gray-green sentinels, sentinel trees are trees that are also soldiers and watchers. Skeletal elm and ash, so dead trees, and specifically dead ash trees. Now, Merritt Frey, he once hoped to be the greatest knight who ever couched a lance. The gods took that away from me. Why shouldn't I have a cup of wine from time to time? So, once aspired to be a great warrior. Let's put a pin in that. Something moved in the underbrush alongside the side of the road. Merritt reined up hard and reached for his sword. But it was only a squirrel. Stupid, he told himself. That's funny. Shout out to Arya, who always says that. shoving the sword back in his scabbard without ever having gotten it out. Outlaws don't have tails. So he's looking for outlaws that have squirrel tails. So now we should think of the children of the forest, obviously, the squirrel people who live in the woods. When old Lord Sumner had made him a squire, everyone had assumed he would be Sir Merritt in no more than a few years, but the outlaws of the Kingswood Brotherhood had pissed on those plans. While his fellow squire Jaime Lannister was covering himself in glory, Merritt had first caught the pox from a camp follower, then managed to get captured by a woman, the one called the White Fawn. Lord Sumner had ransomed him back from the outlaws, but in the very next fight, he'd been felled by a blow from a mace that had broken his helm and left him insensible for a fortnight. Everyone gave him up for dead, they told him later. So we've got, I think this is the whole story in miniature. He's a promising knight, but he's captured by the White Fawn. Now, a White Fawn, again, I just said Nissa Nissa is a deer woman. So a White Fawn makes you think of the white weirwood trees. And she's Wenda the White Fawn. She's leading a band of outlaws in the woods. So that's a very Nissa Nissa-like function. Nissa Nissa frequently looks like the leader of the Night's Watch, just like Lady Cat has a band of outlaws. So the White Fawn, she's got her own band of outlaws. She's a Nissa Nissa figure. So the reason why he was captured by a Nissa Nissa figure is because Azor Ahai kills Nissa Nissa, but the joke is kind of on him. Because the whole point of Nissa Nissa being a child of the forest is Azor Ahai is using her for a blood magic ritual to gain access to what Nissa Nissa has, which is a connection to the weirwood magic. That's why Nissa Nissa also has this weird bloody door symbolism as well. So essentially, Azor Ahai kills Nissa Nissa in a blood magic act. This is to get access to the weirwood net. But to go in the weirwood net, you have to die also. That's why I say the joke's on him. So Azor Ahai is often, we see him trapped. Think of Jaime getting trapped in the Whispering Wood and then brought to Lady Catelyn. That's the same symbolism. Jaime is an Azor Ahai figure, bold, without fear, just mentioned in this paragraph, charges into the Whispering Wood. Of course, the weirwoods, they whisper with their leaves, so that's tons of weirwood symbolism. Then a bunch of knights who were hiding in the trees captured Jaime, and I did an entire Whispering Wood chapter reread to break this down. And then he's brought to Lady Cat, right? So this is the same setup here. Merritt Frey wanted to be a great knight, but instead he was captured by Nissa Nissa in the wood, in the Kingswood, the White Fawn. Then what happens, he gets struck by a blow that leaves him insensible but for a fortnight. Anytime you see fortnight, think of the Night Fort. It's pretty damn consistent. Like, for example, Aemond One-Eye, Night's King figure, he arrives at Harrenhal to fight Daemon on the 14th day. So it's been a fortnight. That's how many days that is. And they even say fortnight. So you have the Night's King character arrive, and then George uses the word fortnight, so we know to think of the Night Fort and Night's King. So same thing here. This Azor Ahai figure, captured by Nissa Nissa, insensible for a fortnight. So that's telling you that essentially Azor Ahai is Night's King, and he is basically being captured by the weirwood magic at the Night Fort and becoming Night's King. Because remember, and this will follow up on the Barrack thing, Night's King gives his seed and soul to Night's Queen, and then they start creating others. And Night's Queen is a magical woman to begin with the ice magic inside of her. So she's the more powerful character. Night's King is probably getting magic power by giving her his seed and soul. He's like willingly allowing her to enchant him. That's how it reads, right? And that makes sense because she's a sorceress. So this fortnight thing, it's at the Night Fort where Azor Ahai becomes Night's King and gives his seed and soul to Night's Queen. And so here we see this figure captured by Nissa Nissa, Merritt Frey, and he's insensible for a fortnight, and everyone gave him up for dead. So now he's a resurrected person when he comes back. but he comes back with this lightning in his head, right? So he's got the power of the lightning. The thing is, of course, the others, they move like lightning and strike like lightning. And because lightning is blue, it seems like George's version of like cold fire. There's the others have cold blue star eyes. George uses blue sapphire, so it's a blue gem with the word fire in it. Blue lightning. This is all stuff that's associated with the others, because the others are associated with their ice magic is like a frozen version of fire magic. And the reason for that is because their daddy is Azor Ahai. Azor Ahai is a fiery person. He gives his dragon seed and soul to this icy woman. And then you get the others, who are like frozen fire spirits, okay? And we're going to see that spelled out over and over in all of this chapter. So when Beric gives his flame of life to resurrect Nissa Nissa, that is inside the Green Fork, by the way. At the banks of the Green Fork, this is where it happens. So this is Azor Ahai giving his seed and soul to the corpse queen. Azor Ahai dies when he does this. He gives up his flame. He gives up his fire. Then the corpse queen is resurrected. So that really makes it look like corpse queen is Nissa Nissa come back to life. So that even could be the weird love story version of all this, where Azor Ahai is sorry that he killed Nissa Nissa and wants to resurrect her. But it seems more like, to me, Nissa Nissa turning the tables on Azor Ahai, who, remember, killed her in an act of blood magic, stole the power of the weirwoods, but then gets trapped in the weirwoods. And then, so that's kind of what's happening here. Merritt Frey, unconscious for a fortnight, and then comes back from the dead, but changed. So Merritt paused for a moment and closed his eyes. His head was throbbing like that bloody drum they'd played at the wedding, and for a moment it was all he could do to stay in the saddle. So throbbing head. The drum thing is important. There's always that drumming. It was at the red wedding too. So he pulled the water skin hung from his saddle, uncorked it, and took a long swallow. The wine, water skin, but what was in there? Not water. The wine was thick and sweet, so dark it was almost black. So that's that black blood symbolism. But gods, it tasted good. The curtain wall of old stones had encircled the brow of the hill like a crown on a king's head. Only the foundation remained, and a few waist-high piles of crumbling stones spotted with lichen. Merritt rode along the line of the wall until he came to the place where the gatehouse would have stood. The ruins were more extensive here, and he had to dismount to lead his palfrey through them. So here's where we are really reminded of the night fort. Fallen leaves lay thick upon the ground like soldiers after some great slaughter. Remember, at the night fort we had the dead trees, and the leaves were scuttling around like roaches, but then like an army. So here again we have dead trees, and the fallen leaves are like soldiers. They're like dead soldiers after a slaughter. Okay? And that's really important because remember, the weirwood leaves are the red hands. And that's a very important symbol. So the leaves on the ground, these are like dead hands, the dead hands of whites, the dead weirwood soldiers, dead green men, anything like that. So let's see. A man in patched, faded greens was sitting cross-legged atop a weathered stone sepulcher, fingering the strings of a wood harp. Well, very, very intimate. We've got a harp fingering. Oh, 2 super chats. Diamond Dog says, with the themes of cycles of violence only causing more violence being prevalent everywhere in the books, what message do you think the Lord of Light is sending by bringing Cat back this way? Well, I think the Lord of Light is pretty demonic and monstrous. I mean, certainly most of the magic is very predatory, so I think that's pretty consistent. And the magic kind of uses people for its own ends. It doesn't really care what it does to people. So I do think that that theme will be visited if and when Arya gives the gift of mercy to Stoneheart. Might be a little note of healing there, but we'll see. Check out my Lady Stoneheart Winds of Winter preview that I did with Quinn. We talked about some of that stuff. Yeah, just green zombie references everywhere, exactly. That's the idea. So there's a green singer. Of course, the children of the forest are called singers. So we've got a green singer, and he's sitting around with all the dead leaves and trees. The music was soft and sad. Merritt knew the song, High in the Hall of Kings Who Were Gone, Jenny would dance with her ghosts. So Jenny of Oldstowns, singing about ghosts, right? Jenny herself, another Nissa Nissa maiden with flowers in her hair like a child of the forest. So Merritt's throat was dry. Bloody outlaws, always hiding in the bushes. It had been in the Kingswood, so he's constantly comparing this to the Kingswood, where Wend of the White Fawn captured him. And again, Stoneheart's going to capture him here, so it's all parallel. You'd think you'd caught 5 of them and 10 more would spring from nowhere. When he turned, they were all around him, an ill-favored gaggle of leathery old men and smooth-cheeked lads younger than Peter Pimple, the lot of them clad in rough-spun rags, boiled leather, and bits of dead men's armor. So lots of skin changer, skin symbolism here, dead men's clothing, and then the green boy symbolism of the young lads. There was one woman with them, bundled up in a hooded cloak 3 times too big for her. So we've got these outlaws are appearing, and there's, some people have no idea what they just saw. Yeah, that's my raiding Rhaegar. He lives on my couch. Rhaegar's hiding out. He's not really dead, but he does have to lie low. You know, Robert Baratheon, that whole thing. So he's on my couch. He reads books, plays the bass a little bit. I don't have a harp, so he's taking up bass. That's how that works. Yeah, more coming on reading Rhaegar soon. But to get back to we've got Merritt Frey. By the way, Frey, obviously a reference to Freyr, who is a horned god from Norse mythology as well. So there's that. Associated with fertility, just like green men and stuff. So we've got these outlaws are coming out. They've got dead men's armor. So these are some sort of dead men in the woods. We don't know if they're others or zombie watchmen or just whites. But we've got dead people coming out of a dead wood. So let's see. Merritt was too flustered to count them, but there seemed to be a dozen at least, maybe a score. I asked a question. The speaker was a big bearded man with crooked green teeth and a broken nose, taller than Merritt, though not so heavy in the belly. A half-helm covered his head, a patched yellow cloak his broad shoulders. Where's our gold? In my saddlebag, 100 golden dragons. Merritt cleared his throat. You'll get it when I see that Peter. He's in the godswood, said the man in the yellow cloak. We'll take you to him. Notch, you hold his horse. So, green teeth. So obviously this is some kind of green man. Now the others used to be green men, so they could still be others. They could be green zombies, but definitely green men. Some kind of, again, people coming out of the weirwood forest. That's what we're dealing with here. And remember, what has Merritt brought? He's brought 100 dragons. So, remember, I've said that Merritt is basically, he's going to be giving his life and fire to Stoneheart. So he's bringing dragons as his sacrifice. So it sounds a lot like Beric giving up his fire of life to Stoneheart. Azor Ahai as Night's King giving his seed and soul, his dragon seed and soul, his dragon fire magic to the Corpse Queen to manipulate and create others with. So we've got Merritt bringing dragons. And we're gonna take him to the godswood now. So leaves crunched beneath their heels, and every step sent a spike of pain through Merritt's temple. They walked in silence, the wind gusting around them. The last light of the setting sun was in his eyes as he clambered over the mossy hummocks that were all that remained of the keep. So that's really important Azor Ahai symbolism. He's got solar eyes, okay? And so he's a solar figure, solar stag figure, but it's about to go out. The light is about to go out of his eyes, if you will. And at the same time, the sun is going down. So we've got long night symbolism, Azor Ahai about to die symbolism. And remember, when I say Azor Ahai, that could be Last Hero as well. It's all part of the same family, so don't like to get too specific about that. But he's going to meet Nissa Nissa in the godswood and give up his dragons. So you can see what's going on here. In general. Behind was the godswood. Peter Pimple was hanging from the limb of an oak. Dun dun dun. A noose tight around his long, thin neck. His eyes bulged from a black face, staring down at Merritt accusingly. You came too late, they seemed to say. But he hadn't. He had come when they told him. You killed him, he croaked. Sharp as a blade, this one, said the one-eyed man. And aurochs was thundering through Merritt's head. Mother have mercy, he thought. I brought the gold. So an aurochs, of course, is a hairy bull. It's a kind of hairy bull creature that's extinct now. So another horned animal thundering through Merritt's head. So it's the same thing. Horned symbolism, horned god symbolism, lightning and thunder symbolism, just like at the beginning of the chapter. We've got a one-eyed man. It's not real. That's Jack B. Lucky. It's not Beric, but he's pretending to be Beric. And the point is the Odin one-eye symbolism, because a lot of this is going to revolve around hanging. So another death transformation symbol besides the weirwood stigmata and dying and being thrown into a green sea is hanging, because of course Odin hung from Yggdrasil for 9 days and nights, and that was his death transcendence experience, where he either died or hovered on the brink of life and death, and then gained the magic of the runes and emerged more powerful and a champion over death through the magic of hanging on Yggdrasil. So George is using that a lot. Bloodraven is hung on the tree in the sense that he's pinioned to it. The roots are around his neck and running through his body. So he's tied to the tree. Odin is also tied to the tree when he's hung. He's speared to it with his spear, Gungnir, as well. So we're going to see Catelyn hanging people. She's called the Hang Woman. And when she hangs people, that's kind of like throwing them into the weirwood net. It's giving them Odin symbolism potentially, and we'll see how that works in a second. Raven's Oath says, if, like Catelyn, Stoneheart doesn't do what George intends, what do you think may happen if she lives beyond the meeting with Jaime and Brienne? I'm not sure what you mean by not doing what George intends, but I kind of think that she won't live beyond that meeting of Jaime and Brienne. I think there will be two. I think that, Jaime will initially be sent out on a quest with Brienne, and then they'll come back to the cave. And that's probably when Stoneheart will see her final act. The thing about Cat is she's trying to restore Riverrun to the Tullys, as well as taking revenge on Freys. She's trying to restore Riverrun to the Tullys and Winterfell to the Starks, because family duty, honor. Okay? So she's probably helping to engineer the downfall of Riverrun. That's pretty clear. We talked about that in the Stoneheart stream. I don't want to get into all that, but the outlaws are all over Riverrun and the Freys and all that stuff. So there's going to be a great massacre, and Riverrun's going to be given back to Tullys, engineered by Lady Catelyn. So that she's going to do, but that's probably going to be through Jaime and Brienne as well. That's going to be a part of that. She may force Jaime to open the gates from the inside, because remember, it's held by a Frey Lannister alliance, Riverrun. I was looking up the meaning of sapphire because I was interested. I started thinking about, we're going to talk about Brienne and the sapphires and all that. And I said sapphires are a good symbol of cold fire. And that's why George gives people star sapphire eyes and uses that gem. It has the word fire associated with stars, but it's blue, right? So the closest I could get to an origin, it's originally a Hebrew word that the Greeks borrowed and turned into Saphiros. But the Hebrew is sapir. I don't know if it's a P or F sound. It's S-A-P-I-R. And one translation I saw is like beloved of Saturn or friend of Saturn. Now, I don't know if I wasn't able to verify that. So I don't know if anyone can, but that's interesting. By the way, Signs and Portals 1 and 2, also good to watch with this stream if you're interested in all this stuff. We're working our way to the Sansa Snow Castle scene. That's what this is. The next few streams are going to be Sansa, Catelyn, Eerie, and we're going to get to that Snow Castle scene. And that's really going to help us figure out the Night's Queen Nissa Nissa stuff. The PayPal link is in the description of the video below. A Grey Waste Tim sighting. Hey, Grey Waste Tim. Hope you're getting gray wasted. I almost asked you to come on with me, man, because a lot of this is theoretical. I've got a lot to read too, but I'll have to get you in on some of this. And if you have any thoughts, leave them in the chat. I'll be sure to look for your comments, my man. Luna Cascade says, just wanted to show my appreciation. The ice spider's gone. There it is. Gonna woodshed your past videos this weekend. Yeah, if you're just discovering my channel late, the good news is that I have been blazing a trail of glory for many years now. And if you're into the symbolic analysis, you can go back pretty far. Now, my newest stuff is a little more polished. Go back to the old ones. Obviously I'm not quite as good, but the content is strong. I will vouch for that. It's just a little slower paced, maybe. Whatever. Saturn is an agricultural god? I did not know that. I mostly just associate him with Kronos and time and stuff like that. Okay, so Peter Pimple is hung. Let's see here. Interesting thing. So I think Merritt Frey might be a last hero version of this figure, because one of the things is that, remember, the last hero, when he finds the children of the forest, he's in a bad way, just like Merritt Frey is. His 12 friends are dead. His horse is dead. His dog is dead. So the last hero is all by himself. His friends are dead. Horse, dog, dead, in the cold, sword broken. And then he gets help from the children of the forest. There's a gap in the story, and he emerges later as the leader of the Night's Watch. And he's riding out to win the war for the dawn. He's got a sword of dragon steel. So that's the path I think that we're seeing here. We're seeing Merritt Frey as a last hero going to get help from Nissa Nissa and the children of the forest. But that help is a resurrection help. And that's what I've always said, is that the help that the children got from the forest was that he was resurrected. And so were his friends. And the first Night's Watch were all green zombie rangers. Okay? So that is what I think we are watching. We are watching a very messed up version of the last hero going to get a resurrection from Nissa Nissa or Corpse Queen or something, okay? So this is the closing part of the chapter. I'm going to read this part here. First it says, he's begging for mercy. And we're like, well, there's one thing you can do to save yourself. The outlaw gave him an encouraging smile. Just answer this question. He says, well, as it happens, we're looking for a dog that ran away. A dog? Merritt was lost. What kind of dog? Merritt was lost and doesn't know where the dog is. So that sounds like a Last Hero reference, because Last Hero is lost in the cold, dead lands, and his dog died. So here we've got a missing dog, and Merritt himself is lost. Now, final bit to the scene. It says, the Red Wedding was my father's work, and Ryman's, and Lord Bolton's. Lothar rigged the tents to collapse and put the crossbowmen in the gallery with the musicians. Bastard Walder led the attack on the camps. They're the ones you want, not me. I only drank some wine. You have no witnesses. Shout out to Maura Lee, thank you. As it happens, you're wrong there. The singer turned to the hooded woman. Milady. The outlaws parted as she came forward, saying no word. When she lowered her hood, something tightened inside Merritt's chest, and for a moment he could not breathe. And here, I'll give you this one by Azad Injekian. Injekian. I think that's something like that. Apologies. Great artwork, though. You can see his name up on the screen, too. So if anybody looks like either a Turkish or Armenian name, something like that. So let's see here. The outlaw, okay. So when she lowered her hood, something tightened inside Merritt's chest, and for a moment, he could not breathe. No, I saw her die. She was dead for a day and night before they stripped her naked and threw her body in the river, the Green Fork. Raymond opened her throat from ear to ear. She was dead. Her cloak and collar hid the gash his brother's blade had made, but her face was even worse than he remembered. The flesh had gone pudding soft in the water and turned the color of curdled milk. Half her hair was gone, and the rest had turned as white and brittle as a crone's. And of course, she's obviously got that crone symbolism. The crone, by the way, is known for opening the door of death and letting the first raven into the world. That is a weird little bit of folklore. I can tell you what that means. That is a story of Nissa Nissa creating the Night's Watch by resurrecting people, opening the door of death. The first raven, those are the first watchmen. Like, think of Blood Raven, the first green, the last green seer. Think of the ravens that are always on the shoulder of the Night's Watch, who are themselves crows. Crows and ravens are pretty much interchangeable in terms of symbolism. Okay, cousins, if you will. So the crone opening the door of death to let ravens into the world, that's just stuff about Nissa Nissa resurrecting people, okay, from inside the weirwood net. So she's got white hair like a crone. Beneath her ravaged scalp, her face was shredded skin and black blood, where she had raked herself with her nails. But her eyes were the most terrible thing. Her eyes saw him, and they hated. "She don't speak," said the big man in the yellow cloak. "You bloody bastards cut her throat too deep for that. But she remembers." He turned to the dead woman and said, "What do you say, milady? Was he part of it?" Lady Catelyn's eyes never left him. She nodded. Mayor Frey opened his mouth to plead, but the noose choked off his words. His feet left the ground, the rope cutting deep into the soft flesh beneath his skin. Up into the air he jerked, kicking and twisting, up and up and up. So you can see how this Odin symbolism works. We're using a tree to ascend into the sky. We're leaving our feet, so it's like flying. And remember, the green seers have all that flying symbolism, right? So he's becoming a bird. He is ascending the tree. He is ascending into the sky, and he's doing it by being hung like Odin. So we don't see him get resurrected. But our next version of this character, Brienne, does have a kind of resurrection. So let's get ready to talk about that. Let me give you some more art. This, by the way, should have done this earlier. This is, of course, Lady Catelyn floating in the green fork with her weirwood stigmata. It's a great picture. David, another one. It's FEDORCZUK. I don't know how to do RCZ. I don't know what that sound is supposed to be. If anyone that looks like Eastern European of some kind, if anyone can sound that out in the chat, I will attempt to pronounce it. But that's him. His name's on the screen, and that is a great piece of art. So very cool. There she is. That is dead Nissa Nissa in the green sea. I mean, you can literally see it. Polish Swagger Dagger says. This is earlier, by the way. This is the Cat's Paw Assassin scene. This one is VL is the artist. And also, just real quick, I'll go back to point out that the first time we ever see Catelyn, she is sitting, she's walking into the godswood to see Ned. Ned, by the way, a Stark, a cold figure with a black dragon sword. He's a last hero figure hanging out in the godswood. Brienne, very much parallel. She's got sapphire isle symbolism, blue armor, blue eyes like another, but she's got a black and red dragon sword with direct, strong parallels to Lightbringer. Jon Snow is another one of these figures that's a last hero figure. When he dreams of having a red fire sword, he also dreams of being armored in ice, and his name is Snow. So we've got a snowy, ice-armored dude who has a fiery sword. Also, Dany's undying vision. She sees Stannis as a blue-eyed king with no shadow and a red sword. So no shadow, meaning resurrected. Blue-eyed, other symbolism, and a red sword. So there is this version of Azor Ahai where it's an ice and fire combination. That's usually a last hero figure, I think. Brienne and Jon are two of the strongest ones. I sometimes call those the good other. In any case, in the Godswood, when we meet Catelyn, she is, like I said, hanging out with her husband, a last hero figure with a dragon sword. And she is sitting with her back to the tree. And she's the one who believes in the others and the children of the forest. And Ned's like poo-pooing it. So she is doing that function of the weirwood goddess. She's also bringing news to him as if she were an oracle or something as well. She's telling him about the coming of the horned god, Robert Baratheon. As a matter of fact, that's what she's doing. This is an evil dream, she thought. This is Brienne. But if she were dreaming, why did it hurt so much? The rain had stopped falling, but all the world was wet. So both chapters, very wet and soggy. Both are in a forest. Merritt is in a kind of dream with his headache and his sword. He's constantly having this recapitulation of the Kingswood while he's marching forward. Then when, right when he sees they're about to kill him, it says he's too shocked to fight, and it becomes a dreamlike thing where he doesn't even struggle. So Brienne, similarly, in pain, in a dream. Oh gosh, we got to talk about the Tower of Joy too. So Ned is a last hero figure at the Tower of Joy. He is trying to get to Lyanna, right? Another Nissa Nissa figure in a tower. And right before the chapter before his Tower of the Joy dream, that's the one where he's fighting with Jaime in the streets in the rain. And he blacks out from a wound and is given milk of the poppy. So he goes into a dream and then has the Tower of Joy dream. So the last hero, he seems to be wounded or killed. He goes into a dream, and that's where he has a battle or gains his magic, if you will. So here we have Brienne inside of an evil dream, and the world is wet. She did not understand who had bound her or why. She tried to ask the shadows, but they did not answer. Perhaps they did not hear her. Perhaps they were not real. So she's in a dream full of shadows. We might say that she's in a dream realm, something like that. She dreamed she was at Harrenhal, down in the bear pit. This time it was Biter facing her, huge and bald and maggot white, with weeping sores upon his cheeks. Naked he came, fondling his member, gnashing his filed teeth together. Brienne fled from him. "My sword," she called. "Oathkeeper, please." The watchers did not answer. So, just like the last hero, she's looking for her sword. And Biter is very much an other figure, a monster who's all white and he's definitely like an otherish figure. And so she's looking for her sword, but she can't find it. The watchers did not answer. Renly was there. So the horned god was there with Nimbledick Crab, who's descended from Clarence Crab, who rides an aurochs, a horned figure, and Catelyn's, and also goes to the Whispers where there's a weirwood or whatever. Shagwell, Pig, and Timian had come, and the corpses from the trees with their sunken cheeks, swollen tongues, and empty eye sockets. So remember I said that if you get hung on a tree, that's a symbol for a weirwood resurrection. You're ascending to a godlike status through the trees. You're dying, but also coming back as a magical figure. So here in the dream, the corpses that were hung on the trees, well, they're here again. They're animated. Then it says, Brienne wailed in horror at the sight of them. So Nissa Nissa's wail. And Biter grabbed her arm and yanked her closer and tore a chunk from her face. "Jaime," she heard herself scream, "Jaime." Even in the depths of the dream, the pain was there. Her face throbbed. Her shoulder bled. Breathing hurt. The pain crackled up her arm like lightning. So that's a lightning wound. That's basically like being wounded by the others. So again, this sounds like the last hero, hounded and chased by the others, potentially even killed by the others before the children resurrect him. So, and Brienne, by the way, obviously a female character, but dressing up as a knight, all kinds of gender conflict issues. So it should not surprise you that Brienne is playing the role of the last hero as opposed to Nissa Nissa, the classic female role. Dany does a bit of that too, but then we also see male characters like Jon do Nissa Nissa, like when he gets stabbed. So the gender archetypes do get switched around, and Brienne is a prime example of that. And it's easy to notice because literally in the story, she's doing things that men do, being a knight. Pod doesn't know whether to call her sir or milady, etc., etc. So Brienne is a last hero figure. She's wounded by lightning in this dream. So that kind of makes sense, right? And she can't find her sword. So they're riding through a gloomy wood, a dank, dark, silent place where the pines pressed close. So the trees are pressing close. Again, it's like the Waymar haunted forest scene. The ground was soft beneath her horse's hooves, and the track she left behind filled up with blood. Behind her rode Lord Renly, Dick Crabb, and Vargo Hoat. Vargo Hoat is another Fedorchuk. Okay, so David Fedorchuk. There you go. That's easier to say. I knew it was there. That's the thing about those Polish names, is they're not actually that hard to say. They're just hard to look at. So they were riding through the gloomy wood. There's all these horned gods running around, right? Renly, Vargo Hoat, Dick Crabb. Hot blood ran from Renly's throat. So he's got a red smile. He's a weirwood stigmata'd Renly. The goat's torn ear oozed pus. Where are we going? Brienne asked. These are also dead people, by the way. Renly, Crabb, Vargo Hoat, all dead. So just like the hanged men, these are dead figures in this weirwood dream. Let's see. Where are we going? Brienne asked. Where are you taking me? None of them would answer. How can they answer? All of them are dead. Did that mean she was dead as well? So the last hero is potentially dead or close to dead in this dream, right? Lord Renly was ahead of her, her sweet, smiling king. He was leading her horse through the trees. Brienne called out to tell him how much she loved him, but when he turned to scowl at her, she saw that he was not Renly after all. Renly never scowled. He always had a smile for me, she thought, except... And then she goes into a memory of Renly's death. Cold, her king said, puzzled, and a shadow moved without a man to cast it. And her sweet lord's blood came washing through the green steel of his gorget to drench her hands. He had been a warm man, but his blood was as cold as ice. This is not real, she told herself. This is another bad dream, and soon I'll wake. So Renly is essentially the same as Merritt Frey. He is a green man, horned god, last hero figure who was about to be sacrificed to a weirwood goddess. And that's why Catelyn is standing there when Renly dies. It's so that this green man figure dies before the weirwood goddess figure, who is very much like the triple goddess to the Cernunnos of, the green man, last hero, horned god figure. So it's only barely adapted from, occult Wiccan folklore, if you will. So, interesting here. He goes from being a warm-blooded green man to having blood that's cold as ice. So we can see there's a death transformation and a cold transformation. And remember, a lot of these last heroes, they've got the ice and the fire symbolism. We know the last hero should be a zombie. We know Jon's going to be a zombie. But there's a question of what kind of zombie, right? Cold Hands is a cold zombie who is like a last hero Night's Watchman, a Green Ranger. Jon might end up a Fire White. And ultimately, either one has the right skills to fight the others because they don't need to eat or sleep or stay warm. So, hard to say. I even think that Jon might be a combination. Like, if he's stolen by the others, his body will be cold. But then if fire magic is used to break that enchantment, he might have like a fiery hot spirit inside of an icy body. And that kind of fits his dream, right? Burning red sword, body armored in ice. Fire swords come from Beric lights his sword with his blood. His blood has R'hllor power. That's how you get a fiery sword. So I really do think there's a good chance Jon could be a white of ice and fire. And that's how it would happen. There you go. And Cold Hands, he may have had fire magic at one point that he's just lost. That could be that's gone out or something like that. Renly here is transforming from a warm-blooded green man to a green man with blood cold as ice. So he's becoming a frozen figure, whether he's an other or a frozen last hero or a Night's King. It's one of those things. Then Brienne says, "This is not real. This is another bad dream, and soon I'll wake." Her mount came to a sudden halt. Rough hands seized hold of her. She saw shafts of red afternoon light slanting through the branches of a chestnut tree. A horse rooted against the dead leaves after chestnuts, and men moved nearby, talking in quiet voices. 10, 12, maybe more. We saw that again, a dozen men that Merritt counted as well. So that's that last hero's dozen. Very important math. So there's 12 men. Brienne did not recognize their faces. She was stretched out on the ground, her back against a tree trunk. So, very like a tree sacrifice, her back against the tree. "Drink this, milady," said the girl's voice. She lifted a cup to Brienne's lips. The taste was strong and sour. Brienne spat it out. "Water," she gasped. "Please, water." "Water won't help the pain. This will. A little." The girl put the cup to Brienne's lips again. It even hurt to drink. Wine ran down her chin and dribbled on her chest. When the cup was empty, the girl filled it from a skin. Brienne sucked it down until she sputtered. "No more." So this is like a blood drinking thing. If you're inside the weirwood net, you drink blood. We've seen that from Bran, so I don't want to make too much of that. There's a lot of wine blood drinking symbolism all over the place. It generally just denotes this occult ritual happening. I don't know if it's more specific than that, but of course the weirwoods also drink blood in the sense that they receive sacrifices and they have a bloody mouth as if they have been drinking blood. So the drinking blood is important from that. By the way, I mentioned that these things will be edited, right? I'm going to pull the stream down. I'm going to give it to my editor and he's going to edit it. So my editor is actually a green seer. This is the cool thing. I found a green seer. His name is Tyler. So Tyler the Green Seer. It's kind of like Tyler the Creator. And he's watching right now from the future. So everyone say hi to Tyler in the chat, please. Say hello, Tyler. He's watching from the future right now. And laughing at this heartily. I am sure. I can't hear him laughing, but I know he is in the future where he's watching us. So everyone say hi to Tyler. So let's see. Our last hero is now on a weird dreamlike journey, being led around by a bunch of ghosts and dead people and horn gods and things like that. Now she's being put with her back to a tree and being given the blood sacrifice. So this is probably to help. This is probably part of the resurrection, the implied resurrection, if you will. Thank you, chat. I appreciate that. Brennan says, theory for the Riverlands, the rivers will freeze during the long night. Some symbolism there certainly would be. Because, of course, the trident is especially... The trident is a symbol of all this magic. So, yeah, the others freezing the trident maybe just want the blue fork. But if they freeze the green fork, that would be the best symbolism, or even the whole thing. And Dany dreams of fighting the others at the trident as well. So, yes, that's very, very possible. We think it's bad, but actually people can now use them like highways. Well, the others can. The whites can use them like highways. That would be the point of freezing the rivers. Either to escape or attack the Dothraki in particular. Well, that's true. I think sending Dothraki cavalry against whites is bad, though. We saw that on the show. It didn't make a lot of sense. Edit this comment out, Tyler. Hey, you don't tell Tyler what to do, all right? He does. I can barely tell Tyler what to do. That's the mark of a true editor. They're a little, they don't always listen. In any case, so Brienne is being potentially revived, and this is actually what's happening here, because she's also going to get medical care along with this wine that she's being given. Biter, Brienne said, remembering the weight of him, the way his knee had slammed into her chest. Aye, a real monster, that one. It all came back to her, lightning above and mud below, the rain pinging softly against the dark steel of the hound's helm, the terrible strength in Biter's hands. Suddenly, she could not stand being bound. She tried to wrench free of her ropes, but all that did was chafe her worse. Her wrists were tied too tightly. There was dried blood on the hemp. Is he dead? She trembled. Biter, is he dead? She remembered his teeth tearing into the flesh of her face. The thought that he might still be out there somewhere breathing made Brienne want to scream. He's dead. Gendry shoved a spear point through the back of his neck. Drink, milady, or I'll pour it down your throat. Let's see. The girl was thin, and this is the girl that's serving Brienne this wine. The girl was thin to the point of looking starved. She wore her brown hair in a braid, and her eyes were older than her years. So she's a child who's much older than she looks. That's child of the forest alert, right? And brown hair, brown eyes, plain. Willow, 6 years older, because Brienne's already met Willow. So Brienne says, "You're the sister, the innkeep." "I might be," the girl squinted. "What if I am?" "Do you have a name?" Brienne asked. Her stomach gurgled. She was afraid that she might retch. "Heddle, same as Willow. Jane Heddle." So, Heddle. What does Heddle mean? One of a set of looped wires or cords in a loom. Oh, so it's about weaving. With an eye in the center through which a warp yarn is passed before going through the reed to control its movement and divide the threads. Wow, that's sounds pretty esoteric. I know that's just sewing, but you can see why that name is interesting for a Nissa Nissa figure. She's the innkeep. So the Inn of the Crossroads is a huge weirwood symbol. It's got the tree where people get hung from right outside. The crossroads, obviously, like the river Styx, where you cross over to the afterlife, right? And so the innkeeper of the crossroads, she's a child, and all the people that live at the inn are now children as well. And Brienne calls it the Orphan's Inn. So it's an inn full of children. It's a weirwood symbol full of children. So pretty self-explanatory. So the innkeeper of this place is definitely a Nissa Nissa type figure. And then so we've got Heddle. Yes, it's the weirwood net. That's what's being woven and controlled. So it's an eye through which the strings are passed to control the weaving. Like, you guys get it, right? And this is why it pays to believe literally every theory that I say, because anytime you look up something, it just verifies my theories. So I don't know what to say about that, but it's true. So that's Heddle for you. That was pretty good. But yeah, like I said, you look up, yeah, we should think of the Norns. Thank you. Duh. The Norns are big weirwood goddess inspirations. They sit in front of Yggdrasil and weave the fates of man. Okay? So that's a very Norn-like version of Nissa Nissa with the Heddles. Okay, so Gendry killed him. Let's see. The girl was thin, blah, blah, blah. Jane Heddle. And let's see. You're to stay bound till you stand before milady. Renly stood behind the girl, pushing his black hair out of his eyes. Milady means for you to answer for your crimes. Milady. The wine was making her head spin. It was hard to think. Stoneheart. Is that who you mean? Lord Randall had spoken of her back at Maidenpool. Lady Stoneheart. Some call her that. Some call her other things. The Silent Sister. Mother Merciless. The Hangwoman. The Hangwoman. When Brienne closed her eyes, she saw the corpses swaying underneath the bare brown limbs, their faces black and swollen. Suddenly she was desperately afraid. Podrick, my squire, where's Podrick? And the others? Sir Hyle, Sir Maribald, Dog. What did you do with Dog? So here, this is why I pointed this out in the Merritt Frey chapter, because these chapters seem to be directly parallel. They both lead to Stoneheart in Weirwood's places, and the characters going there are wounded, bedraggled, and outnumbered, okay? And there's a missing dog. There's a missing dog in both. I mean, it's pretty fun. Pretty fun. What did you do with Dog? Where is my dog? Says the last hero. The last hero is a dog lover, guys. He's not even worried about his friends. He's worried about his dog. And isn't that realistic? Oh, okay. Brennan is saying there's historical significance to the rivers freezing. That's how the Mongols conquered Russia, which George would know. Of course, he's a better student of history than me. Hence why it would be useful to the Dothraki. That's interesting. Of course, George could be thinking about that as, like, you know, the whites are the Mongols in that scenario. The whites are the ones freezing the rivers in order to conquer. But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, crossroads, exactly. Liminal spaces, crossing over points, right. All that stuff. And all the symbolism. Like, for example, the weir. You know, I explained the weir thing. A weirwood, of course. Well, a weir is a wooden dam built across a river. It kind of strains the river and catches the big fish and strains them in baskets out of the river. You could walk along the weir like a bridge and pull the fish out of the baskets, right? So yeah, the last hero, definitely, we've always said that that means he's probably a skin changer. That's no doubt the case. So the last hero is looking for the others, looking for his or her dog. Also, the last hero could be a female character. Arya is a last hero character as well, so we can't even assume the last hero is a man. The gender's not important, and the last hero figures have that. It's like an alchemical unity thing. So male and female, ice and fire, light and dark. Brienne, for example, her sigil Tarth has a sun and has moon, has a sunset and a sunrise. So that's another unity symbol. Just like Brienne with her ice symbolism, but with her black and red dragon sword. So there you go. The ice itself, the Stark sword ice, it's a black dragon sword named Ice. The obsidian is frozen fire. So frozen fire. It's ice and fire unity. Unity weapons are the best to kill the others. That's kind of what the symbolism seems to be suggesting. Gendry and the girl exchanged a look. They're like, dog, what? Brienne fought to rise and managed to get one knee under her before the world began to spin. So there's a lot of things happening to the world. The world is wet. The world is dreamy. The world is spinning. It's trying to tell us, like, this is cataclysmic stuff going on. So again, long night. That's what we should think of. It was you who killed the dog, milady, she heard Gendry say, just before the darkness swallowed her again. So they're thinking of the hound, obviously. And it wasn't actually the hound. She killed somebody wearing the hound's helm. I think it was Rorge, right? Yeah, it was Rorge. So a little bit of confusion then. I don't think the last hero would have killed his own dog. That doesn't make sense, but I don't know. You guys tell me if there's a way that makes sense. Will Brienne find bone thugs at the crossroads? Hell yeah, Kelly. I don't need a translation for that. At the crossroads. My singing voice is not here today. Otherwise, I would honor you with the little boys. Boys to men. You said bone thugs, but I like boys to men better. So, I'm familiar with the whole era. Jodeci. Yeah, I'm old. I remember all that stuff. So, yeah. I guess bone thugs are pretty dope. I shouldn't compare them right to boys to men. Boys to men really just sings, whereas bone thugs are rappers who also sing. So that's not a fair comparison. But Tyler, you can cut that out, by the way. Quinn Justin says, thanks so much for supplying me with great content to enjoy while I'm hard at work. No problem. Happy to be of service. I don't know how the delayed chat is going to work with all that. I can see a bunch of boys to men stuff in like 2 minutes, but whatever. Yeah, Bone Thugs are fucking dope, dude. I definitely can't do Bone Thugs. That's outside of my wheelhouse for sure. Those guys were fast. Limber of tongue. So let's see here. So Brienne enters another dream here. Just a series of dreams. Then she was back at the Whispers. Now remember, the Whispers, this is more weirwood stuff because there's a weirwood tree at the very end of their journey to the Whispers. And just like the Whispering Wood, the Whispers, that's a weirwood symbol. The Whispers, the sound that the Whispers are named after supposedly comes from the heads that Clarence Crabb and his Wood's Witch wife collected. So whispering heads, that's just like more weirwood stuff, with the weirwoods having the skull face carved on them. Matt Diff says, last hero would not kill his dog before his death, but the resurrection might cost the life of his dog. That could be true. Just like Jon, Ghost is probably going to be sacrificed to resurrect Jon. That's a good point. If you say something, no, Tyler's not going to be looking in the chat to censor the chat. He's just worried about me. So, you're a mod, Jackie. You wouldn't say. You're the one supposed to be taking inappropriate things out of the chat, not putting them in the chat. Lucas Hunt. Yes, the thing is, I can't scroll back but so far, Lucas. If you could just repeat your questions, I will try to answer them. That'd be the easiest thing for me, if you could just repeat them. So I'll keep an eye on the chat for you to do that. Let's see here. So then she's back at the Whispers, standing amongst the ruins and facing Clarence Crabbe. He was huge and fierce and mounted on an aurochs, shaggier than he was. So he's an animal-like figure riding an aurochs. He's a giant. So this is some sort of giant horned lord. The beast pawed the ground in fury, tearing furrows in the earth. Crabbe's teeth had been filed into points. When Brienne went to draw her sword, she found her scabbard empty. So again, the last hero has lost his sword. So when Brienne went to draw her sword, she found her scabbard empty. So again, last hero missing their sword. No, she cried, as Sir Clarence charged. It wasn't fair. She could not have a fight without her magic sword. Where's her dragon steel? Sir Jaime had given it to her. The thought of failing him as she had failed Lord Renly made her want to weep. My sword, please, I have to find my sword. The wench wants her sword back, a voice declared. And I want Cersei Lannister to suck my cock, so what? Jaime called it Oathkeeper, please. But the voices did not listen, and Clarence Crabbe thundered down on her and swept off her head. Brienne spiraled down into a deeper darkness. She dreamed that she was lying in a boat, and her head pillowed on someone's lap. There were shadows all around them, hooded men in mail and leather, paddling them across a foggy river with muffled oars. So this is definitely a death crossing here. Crossing this foggy river in a dream. Yeah, this is great. She was drenched in sweat, burning, yet somehow shivering too. So there's the ice and fire unity symbolism I was talking about. The fog was full of faces. Beauty, whispered the willows on the bank, but the reeds said, freak, freak. Brienne shuddered. Stop, she said. Someone make them stop. The next time she woke, Jane was holding a cup of hot soup to her lips. Perhaps some weirwood paste, if we're thinking about the last hero here. Onion broth, Brienne thought. She drank as much of it as she could until a bit of carrot caught in her throat and made her choke. Coughing was agony. Easy, the girl said. Gendry, she wheezed. I have to talk to Gendry. He turned back at the river, milady. He's gone back to his forge, to Willow and the little ones to keep them safe. So just as Cold Hands brought Sam to the wall, but didn't cross, we have Gendry, the Horned Lord, bringing them to the river, but not crossing. So it's a psychopomp thing where bringing them to the crossing, but not crossing with them, because the psychopomp doesn't actually need to go into hell. He's just helping you get there. Well, not hell, but wherever the afterlife is. So that's why Gendry turned back at the river. No one can keep them safe. She began to cough again. Let her choke. Save us a rope. One of the shadow men shoved the girl aside. He was clad in rusted rings and a studded belt. At his hip hung a long sword and dirk. A yellow-gray cloak was plastered to his shoulders, sodden and filthy. From his shoulders rose a dog's steel head, its teeth bared in a snarl. No, Brienne moaned. You're dead. I killed you. The hound laughed. You got that backwards. It'll be me killing you. I'll do it now. I'd do it now, but milady wants to see you hanged. Guest right don't mean so much as it used to, said the girl. Not since milady come back from the wedding. Some of them swinging down by the river figured they was guests too. We figured different, said the hound. They wanted beds. We gave them trees. So that's kind of like beds and trees. That's just dreaming, green dreaming. Again, these people are hung on trees. This is a symbol for using trees for death transcendence, like Odin. So they're like beds in that they're entering a dream state. And, of course, because the weirwoods are associated with dreaming in general, So beds and trees, same thing here. And it's also a noose. It's all the same thing. So we gave him trees, and then we got more trees, though, put in another shadow, one-eyed beneath a rusty pot helm. We always got more trees. So there's a one-eyed man. That's Jack, by the way, but he's in both scenes. He's in Merritt's scene, too. I actually didn't quote that part. And I guess I should check the PayPal here. I have not done that. I'll do that in a second. We're almost to the end of this chapter. So this time, another dream. She dreamed that she was home again at evenfall. Through the tall arched windows of her Lord Father's hall, she could see the sun just going down. I was safe here. I was safe. She was dressed in silk brocade, a quartered gown of blue and red, decorated with golden suns and silver crescent moons. On another girl, it might have been a pretty gown, but not on her. She was 12. Ungainly and uncomfortable, but that's also last hero math again. It's like a group sitting out saying, and we were 12. Of course, last hero's the +1, but it's that dozen that we're talking about. Ungainly and uncomfortable, waiting to meet the young knight her father had arranged for her to marry, a boy 6 years her senior, sure to be a famous champion one day. She dreaded his arrival. Her bosom was too small, her hands and feet too big. Her hair kept sticking up, and there was a pimple nestled in the fold beside her nose. He will bring a rose for you, her father promised. But a rose was no good. A rose could not keep her safe. It was a sword she wanted. Oathkeeper. I have to find the girl. I have to find his honor. Finally, the doors opened, and her betrothed strode into her father's hall. She tried to greet him as she had been instructed, only to have blood come pouring from out of her mouth. She had bitten off her tongue as she waited. She spatted at the young knight's feet and saw disgust on his face. So this is all weirwood stigmata, biting the tongue, bloody mouth. She spatted at the young knight's feet and saw the disgust on his face. Brienne the beauty, he said in a mocking tone. I've seen sows more beautiful than you. He tossed the rose in her face. As she walked away, the griffins on his cloak rippled and blurred and changed to lions. Jaime, she wanted to cry. Jaime, come back for me. But her tongue lay on the floor by the rose, drowned in blood. Brienne woke, suddenly gasping. Okay, so here we have the final Brienne scene in this chapter. She's now in the cave. She's waking up in formerly Barrack's cave, right? Something moved in one of the shadowed alcoves behind the candle. An old gray man clad in rags, so think of Bloodraven. The blankets that had covered him slipped to the floor. He sat up and rubbed his eyes. Lady Brienne, you gave me a fright. I was dreaming. So definitely Bloodraven figure. This is actually Thoros. It's old and haggard Thoros. But he's playing the role of Bloodraven in the cave of a green seer. So he's dreaming, and he's dressed in rags like Bloodraven. No, she thought, that was me, meaning she was dreaming. What place is this? Is this a dungeon? A cave. Like rats, we must run back to our holes when the dogs come sniffing after us, and there are more dogs every day. He was clad in the ragged remnants of an old robe, pink and white. His hair was long and gray and tangled. The loose skin of his cheeks and chin were covered with coarse stubble. Are you hungry? Could you keep down a cup of milk, perhaps some bread and honey? So that's all like food of the gods there, milk and honey and bread. Thoros was formerly a red priest. He's kind of not anymore. And his red cloak is now so faded that it's pink and white. So that's kind of like Bloodraven, who is a dragon person, but has now become a green seer. And, you know, his cloaks are all faded. He doesn't really have as much connection with dragon magic anymore. So that's kind of like Azor Ahai giving up his dragons. Merritt, remember, giving up his dragons. But I digress. I want my clothes, my sword. She felt naked without her mail, and she wanted Oathkeeper at her side. The way out. Show me the way out. So, last hero is now in the caves of the Children of the Forest, still without a sword, but saying, I really need a sword, guys. Really need a sword. And show me the way out. I've got fighting to do, right? And there's a green seer here. She can't leave yet. She's not ready to go. Even now, she felt lightheaded as if she were floating. The flickering light cast queer shadows. Spirits of the slain, she thought, dancing all about me, hiding when I turned to look at them. Everywhere she saw holes and cracks and crevices, but there was no way to know which passages led out. Which would take her deeper into the cave, and which went nowhere. All were as black as pitch. Might I feel your brow, my lady? Her jailer's hands were scarred and hard with callous, yet strangely gentle. Your fever has broken, he announced in a voice flavored with the accents of the free cities. Well and good. And by the way, when a voice is flavored with the accents of the free cities, it's more musical, so it's a musical voice. Well and good. Just yesterday, your flesh felt as if it were on fire. Jane feared that we might lose you. So, there's another sign of the last hero's fire sort of going out, right? Used to be fiery, but isn't anymore. We'll see. It's sort of like, again, an ice and fire thing. We'll see where that goes. See, what is it that you think I've done? She said. Who are you? We were king's men when we began, the man told her, but king's men must have a king, and we have none. We were brothers too, but now our brotherhood is broken. I do not know who we are, if truth be told, nor where we might be going. I only know the road is dark. The fires have not shown me what lies at the end. I know where it ends. I have seen the corpses in the trees. Fires, Brienne repeated. All at once she understood. You are the merest priest, the red wizard. He looked down at his ragged robes and smiled ruefully. The pink pretender, rather. I am Thoros, Late of Myr, I, a bad priest and a worse wizard. You ride with Dondarrion, the lightning lord. Lightning comes and goes and then is seen no more. So too with men. Lord Beric's fire has gone out of this world, I fear. A grimmer shadow leads us in his place. So, like I said, Beric passed his fire to Stoneheart, who's a grimmer shadow. Potentially the corpse queen. Lightning has gone out of the world. A grimmer shadow leads us in his place. So this is, okay, back to Lord Beric. This is more proof that Azor Ahai's fire is used to create the others. That's why he's called the Lightning Lord, is because his children end up being the others. And again, the others strike like lightning, move like lightning, blue fire, all that stuff. So that is why he's the Lightning Lord, even though he's Azor Ahai. And in this case, he has given his fire to a corpse, Nissa Nissa, and now that Nissa Nissa is walking and not talking, but sort of rasping out of her throat as Lady Stoneheart, the grimmer shadow. Then Thoros says this is a cave, not a temple. But of course, the caves of the Children of the Forest are very much like temples, because that's where the Greenseers live, and the Greenseers are the old gods. Justice, Thoros smiled wanly. I remember justice. It had a pleasant taste. Justice was what we were about when Beric led us, or so we told ourselves. We were king's men, knights and heroes. But some nights are dark and full of terror, my lady. War makes monsters of us all. Are you saying you are monsters? I am saying we are human. You are not the only one with wounds, Lady Brienne. Some of my brothers were good men when this began. Some were less good, shall we say. So this is interesting here. Like I said, when Beric is leading the merry band, it really does seem like Azor Ahai and the green zombies out there doing good in the world. But now the Brotherhood has changed. Their Brotherhood is broken. They've lost their way. Lemoncloak is wearing the Hound's helm, and everything is different. They don't operate with any honor anymore. So this kind of feels like the others now. Remember, Night's King bound his brothers with strange sorceries. And that might be part of the same idea as him and Night's Queen creating others. Like I said, this is all starting with green men, and there appears to be a bifurcation. The Night's Watch is made of dead green men, corpses, and the others are made of green men, spirits, it seems. So this brotherhood that's gathered in the Weirwood Cave here, Grimmer's Shadow or Grimnir's Shadow. Oh, I like that. Odin's Shadow. I like that. That's good. That's good. So I'm not sure if these are who... He even says, I don't know who we are anymore, this brotherhood. They kind of seem like the others. And that would make sense. If Lady Stoneheart is showing us that dead Nissa Nissa becomes Night's Queen, the Corpse Queen, then her servants should be the others. That's essentially what's going on. Azor Ahai has sinned against the weirwood net. He essentially represents, like we were told that the first men cut down the weirwood trees and sinned against the weirwoods or whatever. Azor Ahai is just the magical personification of that. So he's sinning against the forest, just like Waymar invading the forest. In the first chapter. And that's why it makes sense for the Corpse Queen essentially to take his fire and create the others as these messed up guardians of the woods that come back out and they want vengeance, right? So that kind of seems like what's going on with this brotherhood here. Is originally they were a merry band of men, and they had a lot of green man symbolism. They had, who's that guy that dyed himself? Greenbeard. He was a Garth figure with a green beard, and everything was a lot sunnier. And now everything is super grim, and everyone's mean as hell. So, yeah. I feel like the fire magic is kind of like a booster to the necromantic powers that bring back Stoneheart. Yeah, well, I mean, Beric is raising Stoneheart with his life fires. So we have to assume that it is R'hllor power that is animating Stoneheart. And you see that with Atlantis' art, with the glowing eyes. This one's got the glowing eyes. A few of them do. This one is Aransta Sasteo. Not glowing eyes, but super awesome one. This one is by John Jude Palancar. This is her as the hangwoman, sort of impressionist here. This would be her hanging Merit Frey, by the way, by Mark Simonetti. You can see the hound if I zoom in. You can see Lemoncloak with the hound's helm right there. So I guess this would just be them hanging people in general. And then she's got the King of Winter crown down there at the bottom. Let's see. Some were good men, some were less good. Some of their brothers. So, next quote. Our time together is at an end, I fear. And that's Thoros talking to Brienne. I hear my brothers coming. Our Lady sends for you. Brienne heard their footsteps and saw torchlight flickering in the passage. You told me she had gone to Fairmarket. And so she had. She returned whilst we were sleeping. She never sleeps herself. I will not be afraid, she told herself, but it was too late for that. I would not let them see my fear, she promised herself. Instead, there were 4 of them, hard men with haggard faces, clad in mail and scale and armor. She recognized one of them, the man with one eye, from her dreams. So, just more Greenseer sightings. A fire pit had been dug in the center of the floor, and the air was blue with smoke. This may be a way of describing this as a cold place. Even though there's a fire, the air is blue with smoke. And remember, the others have fire. It's just cold fire. It's the cold blue star fire, the blue star sapphires, all that's the blue lightning. So I think that's what's here, because it's also cold. Okay, so men clustered near the flames, warming themselves against the chill of the cave. So it's a blue air, chilly cave. And then it says, others stood along the walls or sat cross-legged on straw pallets. That's cool. The others are chill. If they're not doing anything, they just sit cross-legged, you know? They do yoga and stuff. They got good posture. There were women too, and even a few children peering out from behind their mother's skirts. So of course we'd see children in the Weirwood Cave. There's others here. The one face Brienne knew belonged to Long Jane Heddle. A trestle table had been set up across the cave in a cleft in the rock. Behind it sat a woman all in gray, cloaked and hooded. In her hands was a crown, a bronze circlet ringed by iron swords. She was studying it, her fingers stroking the blades as if to test their sharpness. And this art is by Zippo514. As you can see, this exact scene being illustrated. Her eyes glimmered underneath her hood. Gray was the color of the Silent Sisters, the handmaidens of the stranger. Brienne felt a shiver climb her spine. Stoneheart. "Milady," said the big man, "here she is." I, added the one-eyed man, the Kingslayer's whore. She flinched. Why would you call me that? If I had a silver stag for every time you said his name, I'd be as rich as your friends, the Lannisters. That's funny. So there's a way to bring in the stags. That was only... You do not understand. Don't we, though? The big man laughed. I think we might. There's a stink of lion about you, lady. So, let's see. There's a stink of lion about you. That's not so. Another of the outlaws stepped forward, a younger man in a greasy sheepskin jerkin. In his hand was Oathkeeper. This says it is. His voice was frosted with the accents of the north. He slid the sword from its scabbard and placed it in front of Lady Stoneheart. In the light of the fire pit, the red and black ripples in the blade almost seemed to move. But the woman in gray had eyes only for the pommel, a golden lion's head with ruby eyes that shone like two red stars. And shout out to Urtach. This is Urtach's Stoneheart here. A very cold version. But so this Oathkeeper thing is important. Catelyn, of course, is a cat. And she has red eyes. She's animated by R'hllor, so she has red eyes for that reason. She also has bloody red eyes, so she's got red eyes on 2 accounts. So it says, she had eyes only for the pommel, a golden lion's head with ruby eyes that shone like 2 red stars. So we know Melisandre's eyes shine like red stars. She's filled with fire magic. So we should definitely imagine Lady Catelyn's eyes glowing like red stars, just like Atlantis has portrayed her. And so she has eyes only for the pommel. So there's a mirrored symbolism. We've got a cat with red eyes looking at the pommel, which is a cat with red eyes. Okay. The reason why this symbolism exists is because this Oathkeeper represents Lightbringer. It's a red sword. That's obvious. So Oathkeeper, a Lightbringer, of course. And let me grab Foamkeeper. I should have done this a minute ago. Literally, I have Oathkeeper sitting here. This is the foam version of Oathkeeper, which I paint dyed red and black a long time ago. It's sort of chipped off a little, but here's Foamkeeper. So, red sword, this is the Azor Ahai thing. Lightbringer was colored red with Nissa Nissa's blood. That's why it's a red sword. And it was red and warm forever after, just as Nissa Nissa had been warm. So Lightbringer runs on Nissa Nissa power. But if Nissa Nissa is a child of the forest, then she's a cat woman, quite possibly with red eyes. The green seers of the children of the forest have the red eyes. So, whether she does or not, she's a cat woman. And once she goes into the weirwood, she has red eyes. So, Oathkeeper is showing us Azor Ahai's sword was created through Nissa Nissa. That's what this Oathkeeper symbolism is expressing. And that's why Cat, our undead Nissa Nissa figure, is staring at the pommel. Now, inside the story, it's because it's offensive to her. This is Ice, the Stark sword, and it's got a Lannister lion on it. It's a defilement, right? And just as Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa is a defilement, just as I always say, it was an abomination, an act of blood magic, not a willing sacrifice by Nissa Nissa, but an abominable murder by Azor, right? So we've got Nissa Nissa staring at the Nissa Nissa symbol on Lightbringer. And she's mad. She's offended. Okay? You follow me? So, eyes only for the pommel. There's this as well. Thoros of Myr drew a parchment from his sleeve and put it down next to the sword. It bears the boy king's seal and says the bearer is about his business. Lady Stoneheart set the sword aside to read the letter. The sword was given to me for a good purpose, said Brienne. Jaime swore an oath to Catelyn Stark. Before his friends cut her throat for her, that must have been, said the big man in the yellow cloak. We all know about the Kingslayer and his oaths. It is no good, Brienne realized. No words of mine will sway them. She plunged ahead despite that. He promised Lady Catelyn her daughters, but by the time we reached King's Landing, they were gone. Jaime sent me out to reach Lady Sansa. And if you had found this girl, asked the young Northman, what were you to do with her? Protect her. Take her somewhere safe. The big man laughed. Where's that, Cersei's dungeon? No. Deny it all you want. That sword says you're a liar. Are we supposed to believe the Lannisters are handing out gold and ruby swords to foes? That the Kingslayer meant for you to hide the girl from his own twin? I suppose the paper with the Boy King's seal was just in case you needed to wipe your ass? And then there's the company you keep. The big man turned and beckoned, the ranks of outlaws parted, and 2 more captives were brought forth. The boy was the imp's own squire, my lady, he said to Lady Stoneheart. To others, Randall Bloody Tarley's bloody household knight. Hyle Hunt had been beaten so badly that his face was swollen almost beyond recognition. He stumbled as they shoved him and almost fell. Podrick caught him by the arm. Sir, the boy said miserably when he saw Brienne. My lady, sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for, Brienne turned. You have nothing to be sorry for. Brienne turned to Lady Stoneheart. Whatever treachery you think it may have done, my lady, Podrick and Sir Hyle were no part of it. They're lions, said the one-eyed man. That's enough. I say they hang. Tarley's hanged a score of ours, past time we strung up some of his. Sir Hyle gave Brienne a faint smile. My lady, he said, you should have wed me when I made my offer. Now I fear you're doomed to die a maid, and me a poor man. Let them go, Brienne pleaded. The woman in gray gave no answer. She studied the sword, the parchment, the bronze and iron crown. Finally, she reached up under her jaw and grasped her neck, as if she meant to throttle herself. Instead, she spoke. Her voice was halting, broken, tortured. The sound seemed to come from her throat, part croak, part wheeze, part death rattle. The language of the damned, thought Brienne. I don't understand. What did she say? She asked the name of this blade of yours, said the young Northman in the sheepskin jerkin. Oathkeeper, Brienne answered. The woman in gray hissed through her fingers. Her eyes were 2 red pits, burning in the shadows. She spoke again. So there we get the burning red eyes quote. I knew it was there somewhere. No, she says, call it Oathbreaker. She says, it was made for treachery and murder. She names it false friend, like you. So this is literally Nissa Nissa pointing at Lightbringer and going, F that thing. Which, of course, right? Let's see. To whom have I been false? And even calling Lightbringer false friend, that's a good clue that the entire Lightbringer myth is like, that's not really the hero. That's not how you make a hero's sword. It's an act of horrific blood magic. So, to whom have I been false? To her, the Northman said. Can it be that my lady has forgotten that you once swore her your service? There was only one woman that the Maid of Tarth had ever sworn to. That cannot be, she said. She's dead. Death and guessed right, muttered Long Jane Heddle. They don't mean so much as they used to, neither one. Lady Stoneheart lowered her hood and unwound the gray wool scarf from her face. Her hair was dry and brittle, white as bone. Remember, the weirwoods are white as bone. Her brow was mottled green and gray, spotted with the brown blooms of decay. The flesh of her face clung in ragged strips from her eyes down to her jaw. Some of the ribs were crusted with dried blood, but others gaped open to reveal the skull beneath. So it's a very weirwood-looking person now, more literally, with the bone and blood. Her face, Brienne thought, her face was so strong and handsome, her skin so smooth and soft. Lady Catelyn? Tears filled her eyes. They said that you were dead. She is, said Thoros of Myr. The phrase slashed her throat from ear to ear. When we found her by the river, she was 3 days dead. Harwin begged me to give her the kiss of life, but it had been too long. I would not do it, so Lord Beric put his lips to hers instead, and the flame of life passed from him to her. And she rose. May the Lord of Light protect us. She rose. Am I dreaming still? Brienne wondered. Is this another nightmare born from Biter's teeth? I never betrayed her. Tell her that. I swear it by the 7. I swear it by my sword. The thing that had been Catelyn Stark took hold of her throat again, fingers pinching at the ghastly long slash in her neck, and choked out more sounds. Words are wind, she says, the Northman told Brienne. She says that you must prove your faith. How? Asked Brienne. With your sword. Oathkeeper, you call it? Then keep your oath to her, my lady says. What does she want of me? She asked the name... Oh, went the wrong way. She wants her son alive, or the men who killed him dead, said the big man. She wants to feed the crows like they did at the Red Wedding. Frey's and Bolton's, aye. We'll give her those as many as she likes. All she asks from you is Jaime Lannister. Jaime. The name was a knife twisting in her belly. Lady Catelyn, you do not understand. Jaime, he saved me from being raped when the Bloody Mummers took us, and later he came back for me. He leapt into the bear pit empty-handed. I swear to you, he's not the man he was. He sent me after Sansa to keep her safe. He could not have had a part in the Red Wedding. Of course, remember Roose Bolton said Jaime Lannister sends his regards at the Red Wedding. Lady Catelyn's fingers dug deep into her throat, and the words came rattling out, choked and broken, a stream as cold as ice. So this is why I was saying, fiery eyes, but icy speech. The Northman said, she says that you must choose. Take the sword and slay the Kingslayer, or be hanged for a betrayer. The sword or the noose, she says. Choose. She says, choose. Brienne remembered her dream, waiting in her father's hall for the boy she was to marry. In the dream, she had bitten off her tongue. My mouth was full of blood. She took a ragged breath and said, I will not make that choice. There was a long silence. Then Lady Stoneheart spoke again. This time, Brienne understood her words. There were only two. Hang them, she croaked. As you command, my lady, said the big man. They bound Brienne's wrists with rope again and led her up from the cavern, up a twisting, stony path to the surface. It was morning outside, she was surprised to see. Shafts of pale dawn light were slanting through the trees. So here we have the last hero about to be resurrected, really. It's Brienne's death. But of course, she doesn't die. They start to hang her. And then she says the word sword. They cut her down. And then later, Jaime runs into her and she has the sword. And she's leading Jaime back to the cave. So we know that she doesn't die. It's a death transcendence thing. It's a rebirth thing. So this is the last hero about to be resurrected or killed and resurrected, however you want to say it. And that's why it's morning and it's dawn. Because, of course, the last hero gains a sword of dragon steel after he's resurrected by the children. And that dragon steel sword is almost certainly dawn, which is also the original ice of House Stark. Because, of course, it's a big white sword, and it was used to end the long night. And so the Starks named their swords Ice after that original sword. That's my theory. Check out Dawn is the original Ice 1 and 2. So many trees to choose from, she thought. They will not need to take us far. Nor did they. Beneath a crooked willow, the outlaws slipped a noose about her neck, jerked it tight, and tossed the other end of rope over a limb. Hyle Hunt and Podrick Payne were given elms. Sir Hyle was shouting that he would kill Jaime, but the hound cuffed him across the face and shut him up. He had donned the helm again. If you got crimes to confess to your gods, this would be the time to say them. Podrick has never harmed you. My father will ransom him. Tarth is called the Sapphire Isle. Send Podrick with my bones to Evenfall, and you'll have sapphire, silver, whatever you want. I want my wife and daughter back, said the hound. Can your father give me that? If not, he can get buggered. The boy will rot beside you. Wolves will gnaw your bones. Pretty final. Do you mean to hang her lem? asked the one-eyed men. Or do you figure to talk the bitch to death? The hound snatched the end of the rope from the man holding it. Let's see if she could dance, he said, and gave a yank. Brienne felt the hemp constricting, digging into her skin. Praise Garth, by the way, the hemp. Jerking her chin upward. Sir Hyle was cursing them eloquently, but not the boy. Podrick never lifted his eyes, not even when his feet were jerked up off the ground. If this is another dream, it is time for me to awaken. If this is real, it is time for me to die. So you can see how clever George is with this wordplay. It's both a death and an awakening from a dream. All she could see was Podrick, the noose around his thin neck, his legs twitching, her mouth opened. Pod was kicking, choking, dying. Brienne sucked the air in desperately, even as the rope was strangling her. Nothing had ever hurt so much. She screamed a word. Now, George has said that word was sword. meaning, okay, so, she's the sword or the noose was the choice. So by saying sword, she's like, okay, fine. I'll do what you want. I'll lure Jaime into a trap or whatever. So she comes down, she awakens, death and rebirth. She's given her sword. This is what makes it so easy to tell it's definitely the last hero. The last hero, Brienne, goes into a dreamlike state, almost dead or dead, into the weirwood cave, meets this weirwood goddess spirit inside the weirwood net, is resurrected outside and given a sword back and sent on a mission. So, Mayor Frey doesn't get resurrected, he just dies. But this Brienne chapter shows us the second part of the story. And up until then, they're basically twin stories. So, there you have it. The last hero goes to meet Nissa Nissa, Night's Queen. Like, the thing is, Night's Queen is so mysterious. We think about her as the mother of the others, but I don't know. It's hard to tell what's going on there. She's like all the Night's Queen figures. They're people like Lyanna. They're always associated with weirwoods. Let's see, Alice Stark, Jane Poole, who is pretend Arya, of course, and gets married in front of a weirwood. So again, it's hard to tell if Nissa Nissa and Night's Queen are different people or if they are different stages of the same person. But I'm leaning towards different stages of the same person. It really does seem that way. It could be Night's Queen even working against Night's King and the others. Like, that is a possibility. But in any case, we see this last hero figure going into the weirwood cave and coming out with a sword, with a rebirth, with magic power implied. So Samantha Kreinbring just zooming in to say thanks, and you will catch it later. I'd probably look forward on Tuesday, because we got to give Tyler the Greenseer time for our time to catch up with his time, so he can edit the video and get it out, or something like that. I don't know, but look forward on Tuesday morning, in all likelihood. And next, we will probably read one of a couple different chapters. There's Catelyn's ascent to the Eyrie in a Game of Thrones, where she goes up at night. It's another dream-like Nissa Nissa ascension into a cold. She's going from a hot to a cold environment. She's kind of getting trapped in a frozen land. This is another thing that makes me think that Night's Queen is Nissa Nissa, who's been killed and resurrected. And then we need to get to that Sansa chapter in the Eyrie, where we get, the snow castle and stuff, where she literally creates a snow castle. So please read the end of the Jaime chapter that follows. Are you talking about the one where she meets Brienne, or he meets Brienne, and she's all corpse-like? And anyways, that's good for now. We're at 2.5 hours. That's plenty of work for Tyler. And yeah, thanks for joining me, guys. And I will see you. Like I said, the thing is, tomorrow morning I'll be putting out an 1899 video on my new channel. So if you've watched 1899, I'm sure you'll be looking forward to that. If you haven't watched 1899, at least go over to the new channel and subscribe. That's Moon Media Collective. And then you should watch 1899, because it's awesome. Even though they canceled it after the first season, still worth watching. It's an amazing, incredible work of art. And we're all hoping that it will get picked up by somebody and continued. So there you go. Thanks a lot, guys. I'm hungry, and I'm going to go get some food and soothe my angry cockatoo. It's not a weird joke. That's just Cleo. She's angry. She needs to be soothed. So there you go. Thanks for joining me, guys, and I will see you again soon.